So if you watched any of my videos before, you know that the subjects I mainly talk about are the subject of retirement. You're talking about retirees, generating income, different planning topics for pre-retirees as well as current retirees. One of the subjects that comes up a lot is the subject of annuities. And so I get questions a lot from not only clients, but prospective clients. And I think it's important to talk about the different types. I've done some videos in the past about that. There's, in a nutshell, there's deferred annuities where I'm saving money for some future use. That could be fixed or variable. There's also income annuities where I'm receiving a paycheck for maybe a fixed period of time or for the rest of my life. Those can also be fixed and variable. So I want to talk about a little different type of annuity. It's called a RILA. RILA, or Registered Index Linked Annuity. These have become very popular. They get a lot of flows into these insurance companies. RILAs have become very popular with retirees. And so the benefit, the selling point of RILAs is I track an index, registered index linked annuity, right? And so I'm tracking a particular index and I get some portion of that return. And I also get some downside protection. And so, it's kind of like you can have your cake and eat it too. I want to grow my money, but if I'm wrong about the market, I want some downside protection. So that's the really big selling point about that. And so what sets a RILA apart from traditional annuities, it offers downside protection to a certain level. You can still lose money in a RILA, and it offers growth, perhaps even up to or higher than a particular index. And so how does it do that? So really, a RILA is not investing in actual stocks or index funds or anything like that. Behind the scenes, they're really trading option contracts. That's really how they secure a certain level of the S&P performance or whatever index we're talking about, and also create some downside protection. And so there's multiple indices, as you know. There's S&P 500, Russell 2000, NASDAQ 100. There's many indices. There's the international index, the indices. I mean, there's all different types that are out there that you can track. And so, I'll give you a kind of an example. There's short-term contracts like 1, 2, 3 years, things like that. I want to talk a little bit about. Let's use a 6-year contract as an example. Okay. So if I was an investor, let's say I have an IRA, 401k, and let's say I really like the S&P 500 index, okay? I could buy an S&P 500 index fund inside my IRA. So if I asked you, are you going to hold that investment for another 6 years? And if the answer is yes, and are you comfortable with the ups and downs of that investment? And if the answer is yes, you might want to consider a RILA. And so I'll give you an example here. Here's one particular product, and if we look at, like I said, there's shorter term examples of this, but I'm going to focus on like a 6-year example. So if I entered into a 6-year RILA contract, this particular product at the time of this video offers the S&P 500 index, and over the next 6 years, they're offering me 120% of the cumulative return of the S&P 500. Okay, so whatever the S&P does cumulatively over the next 6 years, I get 120% of that. And also on the downside, I have what's called a buffer. So let's say that it doesn't happen very often, but on the chance that the S&P is actually negative return cumulatively over the next 6 years, I have a 10% buffer there. So let's say the cumulative return is negative 5%. I lose nothing because the first 10% of my losses are covered. If the index is cumulatively down 15% over the next 6 years, well, I lose 5% because you see how that works. I get a buffer from my losses up to 10%. So theoretically, there's an unlimited chance for loss. If the market really lost a lot of money, like a 2008 situation, but we're also talking 6 years. We're not talking about a 1-year stretch. There are some 1-year stretches of time with these products that you can do it for a very short contract. But I'm talking about longer stuff in this example. So you'll see here in this example, I could do this particular company's product. 120% of the S&P is my participation rate. And then and it's also uncapped, meaning there's no cap on that. So if the S&P did 50%, well, I get all that. There's no cap on that. And in fact, I get 120% of that. And there's a 10% buffer on the downside. So that's just an example of how a RILA would work. And some products have fees, some don't have any fees. You might say, how can it not have a fee? Well, that's really baked into the option contracts. When they trade these option contracts to secure not only the outperformance of the index and also create the buffer on the downside, there's a spread there. They're making money, obviously, or they wouldn't issue the product. And so, and I get what I think is a good deal for me. So, but that's basically how it works. And so I think, again, the question would be, do you own an index fund or some aggressive investment? Are you going to hold it for 6 years? And if I held an index fund in my IRA and whatever the return is over the next 6 years, in my example, I will keep all that return, right? Well, I could get more than that. I could get 120% in my example here. And also, if I have an index fund in my IRA, if there's a negative 6 year stretch of time, I have no protection. Yeah, I have all the risk is on me as an investor, right? So I think if you want to participate in the index and possibly even get more than that return, and then I want some protection on the downside, that could make sense. So anyway, I think these are interesting. RILAs, I kind of look at the longer term contracts. That's kind of how I think about growth investments. Let's think about 6 years from now. I think that's a pretty good stretch of time right there. You also have 10% liquidity. Now that could affect your contract value, obviously, if you take money out during that 6 years. Some of the downside is that you have to stay in the contract. And so there's some pretty heavy duty surrender charges if you get out of the contract before it matures. And so there's another thing I like, there's protection for your beneficiaries. So let's say that I died sometime within this 6 year stretch. Well, my beneficiaries would get either the amount that I put into it originally or whatever the contract's worth, whatever the greater is. And so that's a pretty good feature. You definitely don't have that with an index fund. If my kid inherits my IRA, I have an index fund in it, and it just happens to be underwater, I lost money, that's what they're going to get. There's no beneficiary protection on just buying an index fund. So now on the flip side of that, the index fund, it's flexible. I can trade it. I can do anything I want. With a RILA, I have to really fulfill that contract, right? Or there's some pretty heavy duty surrender charges. And you can pick even multiple indices within a contract typically in some of these products. So you could say, I want, half of it in the S&P, 25% in the Russell 1000, and 25% in an international index. You could split it up. And those indices have different cap rates and stuff like that. But I think it's really interesting. And I think especially if it's a no-fee product and you're willing to hang in there for a period of time, you're going to be invested in the market anyway. Why not try to get a little bit more than that market can provide you? You also have a chance of loss. Don't get me wrong. There's no panacea here. There's a chance of loss with any investment. And so, but I think just working with a professional that knows what they're talking about, and a licensed professional, if you're working with a certified financial planner, they'll probably have a pretty good understanding of annuities, how they work, and they should know about the different product types that are available. Some advisors, that's just not their area of expertise. That's okay. But if you're interested, find somebody who does know about these products and can kind of look at the pros and cons of these with you. And so I just think that you should, if you're a retiree, not everybody wants maximum risk. Some people want some protection when things aren't so good. In my career, we've seen the tech crash, we've seen 2008, saw COVID. Multiple big down, market environments where people lost a lot of money. And so it's one thing if you have a paycheck coming in from a job, but if you're retired and all you have is what you saved, it's more important to get some protection with those assets. So if you like this video, please like it. And if you would like some more information, my contact information is in the About section of my YouTube channel. And as always, I appreciate you watching my video.